Hi, this is Sharon McNall, and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! And today we're going to create this masculine happy birthday card, and it uses 2 stamp sets from the annual catalog. And we will be using Lovely as a Tree, and we'll be using that tree right there. And we'll be using the Happy Birthday sentiment from Sunshine Sayings. So let's get started creating this masculine happy birthday card. Our card base today is a piece of early espresso, and it is cut 8.5 by 5.5 and scored at 4 1/4. We'll put that aside for now. Our next panel is a Whisper White, and this is cut 2 1/4 by 3. And we will be adhering it to a piece of early espresso cardstock, and that is cut 2 3/8 by 3 1/8. So let's get our stamping done, and we'll be stamping the tree in basic black. We will be using our Stampin' markers, and we'll also be using our watercolor pencils today. So 2 different techniques to show you. So we're just going to ink up the stamp, and I'm going to stamp it towards the top, and it's very tight fitting, but just look at the left and right side before you stamp down. And there's our tree. Our next step is to color in the tree. So we will be bringing in, I've got the Stampin' Right markers, and I'm using Wild Wasabi, and I'm also using a pear pizzazz. And for the watercolor pencil, I'm using the Early Espresso along with a blender pen. So let's just put those aside. We're going to start with Wild Wasabi, and we'll be using the brush tip. So this tree, you don't really need to worry about any kind of shading like you would with your blends, because the stamp does the shading itself for you. So really all I'm doing, it's very, very simple, is I am just kind of scribbling here really, and I'm just adding in all the color from the Wild Wasabi, just being a little bit more careful down here. And then we're just going to bring this color up, and like I said, the stamp set does the shading really for you. I'm just going to add the color to the branches. And we'll just add a little bit down here. There's a little branch there, and a little bit right in there is a little bit of the green, and it's okay if your green blends down with the trunk of the tree. And our next step after we color in the leaves is I'm going to do some of the shading where the grass is. So there's already lines here from the stamp set. I'm going to color that in the Wild Wasabi. I'm just going to press this out here. Just flicking my marker, that's really all I'm doing. And you'll notice there's a little bit darker shading in here, and that's what we kind of want. All right, so we're done with the Wild Wasabi, and now we're going to bring in the pear pizzazz, and I'm just going to blend my pear pizzazz in with the Wild Wasabi just to create a different kind of green for you, and all the way to the edge. And we're not going to see half of this when we cover up with the banner, so it really doesn't have to be perfect. So now I'm going to bring in my Early Espresso watercolor pencil, and I'm just going to color in the trunk. And now I'm going to bring in my blender pen, and I'm just going to smooth out that Early Espresso, just pushing it up towards the branch or the tree branches and down here towards the grass, trying to stay in the lines here. So that looks all smooth and pretty good, and I've got all the white marks out. So now when you're using the blender pen, you just want to make sure that you have a scrap paper here just to clean off the tip so it doesn't transfer over to your next card. So we are done with the basic black ink. We'll set this aside to dry a little bit, and we're going to bring in a piece of Whisper White. This is just a small piece. It's a 1/2 inch by 3 inches, and we're going to be using this for our sentiment. And I'm going to actually bring in the Early Espresso so you can see this a little bit better, since we don't have the white on white for you. So we've got the early espresso, and somewhere on my desk here, I've got the happy birthday sentiment, which is right here. And I'm just going to move this out of the way here. So I'm going to just stamp it off more like in the middle here. Hope I can get this straight. Oh, not very good. So there's, I'm going to grab another scrap for you. I think my ink pad has just really got too much ink on it. So hopefully I'll get it for you right there. Okay, that looks great. So we will close up our early espresso, and now we're going to create the banner, but first we're going to actually put this piece onto the early espresso cardstock. I'm not sure if I told you the size of it, but it's 2 3/8 by 3 1/8. So we're just looking at an 1/8 of an inch border on all 4 sides. I'm going to flip this because I don't want to transfer any ink that I might have on my fingers onto the image there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create this banner, and I want it to go over, extend over. So I'm just going to place this right about there. I'm going to take my paper snips. I'm just going to cut straight up. And now we're going to create this banner effect on this side. I'm going to trim just a little bit off. And now I'm just going to go up in the middle, and then the corner in, right meeting to the middle here. And there's our banner. Get some of this scrap paper out of here. Okay, so now we're just going to take our adhesive and just put a little bit here on that side. And now we're going to bring it in, and I'm going to line it up with the edge of that Whisper White and bring it down as far as I can so I don't have as much Whisper White here. And I'm just going to secure it on the left side there. And then we're going to flip this over, and we're going to add 4.5 dimensionals. So 1 to each corner. And a little one in the middle. And we'll just press those down and remove the backing so we can get it ready for our card front. All right, so we'll set this aside for right now, and we're going to bring in a piece of soft suede, and this is cut 3 3/4 by 5, and I embossed it with my Big Shot ahead of time using the Seaside embossing folder. I thought that kind of created an image of a tree trunk. So what we'll do is bring in a piece of wild wasabi, and that's 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to bring in my Tombow glue. So actually, I'm sorry, I went out of sequence here. I've got a piece of this Wood Textures Designer Series paper pack paper, and it's really kind of neat. It's got all these different shades of wood textures in it. So I just chose a piece that I thought would look a little, you know, color coordinating with all the green and the browns. And it's a little different from the first card that I showed you. So what I really want to do is I'm going to put a little bit of this Tombow glue. Hopefully I got some left here. And this piece is longer than it should be on the sides, but when you emboss your cardstock, a lot of times it will shrink a little bit. So I don't want to cut this exactly 3 3/4 because it's not going to be when you run it through the Big Shot. So what I like to do also is I like to take my, let's see, my block. I'm going to block over here and just give it a good press. I find that helps securing the paper onto embossed cardstock. So I'm just going to flip this over, and I'm going to take my paper snips, and I'm just going to trim this off on both sides. So that way we know our paper's not too short. Okay, so now we can add this piece onto the wild wasabi. We'll just bring in my liquid glue again. Again, I like to use liquid glue on anything that's embossed. And then we'll just flip it over in a 1/4 inch border on all 4 sides. Again, you could take your block and just give it a good press. I don't like to get all that Tombow glue on my fingers, so I like the block, just using your block. All right, so now we can flip this over. The paper's getting a little sticky there. You can either use a Tombow glue, or I'm just going to bring in my adhesive, and I'm going to run it on all 4 sides. And then we'll attach this piece to the Early Espresso card base with 1/4 inch on all 4 sides. So now we're going to attach the image that we created, and all the dimensional backs are off. So we're just gonna, I'm gonna move this to the side here. I don't want it in the middle because I think it looks better off-centered. So we'll just put this in here and then just press down on the 5 areas where your dimensionals are. Now we're going to bring in the gold faceted gems, and these come 72 to a pack, and it cost, the price on that is $5. So I'm going to just take the medium sized gem and I'm just going to add it here, and that just really adds a lot to the card. It kind of ties it all together and it fills up that white space there. So for the inside of the card, I've already done that ahead of time, and this is a piece of Whisper White, and it's cut 4 by 5 1/4, and I just did the same step as I did on the front side of the card, coloring in the tree and the trunk, and we're all set. So here's your card using this type of the Wood Textures Designer Series paper pack, and then this one is just a little tad different in shading. So I kind of like them both. They make great masculine cards. And here's the envelope. I had some extra brown envelopes that I had on hand from a different project that I thought it all tied together. So for all your Stampin' Up! Needs, please visit my website at inspiredbygram.com. Thanks for watching and have a great day.